Catoctin Creek is a proud supporter of bourbon pursuit. At Catoctin Creek, they pride themselves on making traditional rye whiskey as it would have been made in the 1800s. Virginia grain, Virginia water, Virginia barrels. Catoctin Creek, the Virginia rye whiskey. This is brought to you by Smooth Ambler, a proud member of the Bourbon Pursuit family. Smooth Ambler builds on the traditional roots of American whiskey through innovative blends, proudly sourced whiskeys, and a unique line of their own homemade bourbon and rye recipes made in West Virginia. So venture off the traditional trail and go see them in Maxwellton, West Virginia. They'd love to welcome you to the family that they're building around their whiskey. Wilderness Trail is sweet mash Kentucky straight bourbon and rye whiskey, made by master distiller Shane Baker and fermentation expert Dr. Pat Heist. Whether it is high rye or wheated, cask strength or bottled in bond, Wilderness Trail is always non-chill filtered premium whiskey with unparalleled flavor. Distilled, aged, and bottled in Danville, Kentucky.
It pisses me off, to be frank. I don't know if you could tell.
We can't tell. No.
I
Lay
mean,
it on a little bit thicker if you can.
These, yeah, whatever.
Hello, everybody. It's Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon, bringing to you the best in news, reviews, and interviews with people making the bourbon whiskey industry happen. And I'm one of your hosts, Kenny Coleman. Well, it's another jam-packed Bourbon Community Roundtable, and we discuss some of the latest trends and topics that have been happening over the past few weeks. And one of the greatest pieces of whiskey news is that tariffs are now being eliminated. However, this is going to start opening up some international commerce once again. And for bourbon, we're going to take a stab at some theories on what moves we expect some distilleries to start making in 2022. And now, there's always bottle releases that get all the attention. You know, the Antique Collection, Four Roses Limited Edition Small Batch, but after a solid year of bourbon releases, we give our takes on some bottles that maybe should have gotten a little bit more attention. And lastly, the market is the market. And we all know that stores are beginning to price their prized allocated bottles close to secondary. Well, if you've been a longtime customer of that particular retailer, and they start switching their prices to start being closer in line with secondary, are you going to stay with them, or are you going to switch to a new store? With that, enjoy today's episode, and now here's Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. This week's idea comes from fellow Army veteran, airborne veteran that is, Sean D. Well. He writes on fredminnick.com, for the service members or veterans, most of whom have bought or buy all the Class 6 or comparable Navy, Air Force, or Coast Guard liquor dispensaries, what bourbons would you pair with the top two MREs? Ugh. First of all, reminding me of the MREs, better known as meal ready to eat. That brought back a lot of memories. First of all, you eat one of those things and you may not go to the bathroom for a month. That's a legit concern eating MRE. So hopefully you're getting in your roughage elsewhere. But whew, man, they're designed to make sure that you don't gotta go. And, you know, you always get the cute little Tabasco. I miss that. I mean, that's where I fell in love with Tabasco and hot sauces. Anyway, there's really not a whole lot to pair out of those things, but there is one little dish. I always got so excited when I opened up the MRE. I think it always came in like my chicken dishes, and it was the brownie. I mean, the brownie was legitimately good. And then there was like that little vanilla cake had like an orange to it. So I will call out the brownie, and I will call out that little orange cake. God, I can't remember what it was called. But it was really good. So with the brownie, I'm going with Woodford Reserve Double Oak all day long. So bring that in your pack, you know, when you're camping out. No, you're not camping out. You're hiding under the stars on a bivouac, or, you know, out in the desert or something. I mean, hell, who knows where you're at right now, Sean, but if you can sneak in a little bourbon there and there, here and there, good for you. You can pull it off. Do it. But so I'm going to do Woodford Reserve Double Oak with the brownie and the MRE. And then with that vanilla orange cake, I can't remember the damn name of it. I suppose I could Google it, but that would require me turning off my recorder right now and going to the Google. You know what? I'm going to do that. Hold on. Let me Google. All right, I went to the Google, everybody. And it's the pound cake. There's like this, it's like orange vanilla pound cake. And it's really good. They sell, it looks like they sell these on Amazon. Like you can buy the pound cake on Amazon. But that was really, really good. Like I look forward to those. And I would say I would probably pair a toasted, like a Michter's toasted. So here I am, I'm pairing two things that are additional barrel finish, just a little touch of bitterness in there. Some astringency to go along with that meal. And to be honest with you, if you can drink anything with them, it'll probably help the digestive system. It's the truth. Anybody who was in the military, you know what I'm talking about. That's going to do it for this week's Above the Char. Hey, if you want to be like Airborne Sean D. Well, hit me up on fredminnick.com. That's fredminnick.com. Just click contact and let me know what question you have. And if I like it, I'll read it on the air. Until next week, cheers.
With every release from Barrel Craft Spirits, from their bourbon, rye, rum, and American whiskey, it just can't be duplicated. Find out more at barrelbourbon.com. Welcome, everybody. We are back with Bourbon Community Roundtable number 63, the last one that we're doing for 2021. And we have got a good array of topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about some stuff that maybe some bottles that happened this past year, maybe a few little events. We'll kind of talk about, some other things as well. It's a little bit more cultural. I think I end up finding some of the best topics and ideas when I just randomly scroll through Facebook and I see something on the Bourboner Facebook group and it has 150 comments next to it. And it's not like, what's wrong with Blanton's today? But it's actually something that sparks some conversation. So it's going to be good to kind of get into this. But Fred, I'm glad to see you're back. Ryan as well. It's like, Fred, it's been a minute. We missed you here.
Yeah, I've missed a few. I've either been traveling. Actually, it's always been traveling. Or like I think one time we had a sick kid, but it's good to be back. I'm excited to be here. I got my Santa hat on. I'm excited about the holidays. Just this is my favorite time of year. I just love this time of year.
Now, do you love it because it's good eating or good bourbon hunting?
A little bit of both. You get, it's weird right now with the bourbon hunting situation, but I'll tell you, I've found some nice little gems in stores, and people always give me business when they see me shopping. Oh, I didn't know you bought bourbon. Like, yeah, well, fuck you. Of course I go and buy bourbon. But yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible, start to the holiday season for me personally.
Now you know not to approach Fred in the liquor store. You get cursed at.
Well, that or he's going to take the bottle that was maybe allocated for you. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's right. Give me that Buffalo Trace.
Only Blanton's. Just kidding.
That's right.
Just kidding.
Only Blanton's, some Stag without the junior on it. Whatever it is, you're going to be the first one to get it. That's how it is. But let's go ahead and take an opportunity to introduce the rest of the roundtable here. We've got the full crew tonight, so I'll go with who's ever below me first starting off here. So Brian from Sippin' Corn.
Yeah, thanks for having me on number 63. This is an exciting one, approaching Repeal Day, and really looking forward to it. Brian with Sippin' Corn, find me there, and Bourbon Justice.
We didn't even mention that. This is the Repeal Day special. That's the greatest thing about this. I'm glad we're able to have everybody here and kind of talk about this on Repeal Day and give people a little bit of an insight into what we talk about as a part of Bourbon Pursuit podcast and be able to bring on these varied mix of people down here that can provide lots of good intel and inside sort of information and good opinions on everything that's happening. But Ryan, I know you're eager to say something here.
Yeah, I mean, when Repeal Day happened, who would have thought, how many years it's been that we'd be on a podcast talking about Repeal Day? So I bet they never thought that when the law went away or whatever. So no, it's pretty cool that we get to do this.
You think they would have thought of having the internet and thinking of streaming video back then?
No, just Morse code, like Fred, what's your pick of the year? Dash dash.
It's funny if you go back to this time frame, 1933, when Prohibition was repealed. Radio was fairly, new to most people. The automobile, not everybody had one. I don't think Alaska was a state yet. Hawaii wasn't. I mean, it was a very different time frame.
Yeah, no bourbon or Facebook groups.
Yeah. But I think they could have fathomed this because the science fiction writers of that time had very vivid imaginations. They were off on a few things, but sometimes they nailed it. I mean, they had a good pulse on mankind.
I don't know if anybody predicted the bourbon or Facebook group. That's kind of, that's a little too sci-fi even for sci-fi. It's out there.
Go ahead, Blake. Introduce yourself.
Yep, guys, thanks again. Always fun to be here. Even more fun when it's, celebrating Repeal Day. Obviously a big contributing factor to what we do today. So I'm Blake from Bourboner and Sealbox. You can find me on all the socials or online at sealbox.com. That's SEELBACHS. Thanks.
It's just a little contributing factor. I mean, if it wasn't, this be like Speakeasy Pursuit. That's what it ended up.
We wouldn't be broadcasting it live on the internet. I'm guessing.
That's probably true.
We'd be on the dark web.
Have a
mask
code
on
in Discord or something.
Yeah, decoding our voices.
Yeah, somebody put the filters on the voices then. And Jordan, wrap us up there.
Thanks for having us, guys. So this is Jordan, one of the three guys from Breaking Bourbon. You can find us breakingbourbon.com. We're your source when you're in the liquor store trying to decide what bourbon to buy.
And before we kind of dive into this, I also kind of want to take a moment to kind of reminisce on a good memory. I think that most of us have shared, minus one person here. And Santa Hat was actually tasting something from pre-Prohibition times that Brian actually brought over. And, I think that it was a real treat when we were able to do that. It was a roundtable recorded after Bourbon and Beyond, episode 1, I guess you could call it, way back when. But that also kind of goes back to even thinking, I mean, other than that, have you all tried, I know Fred has, have you all tried any other kind of Prohibition era whiskeys since then?
I actually had one today after my long mediation. The attorney on the other side broke out something that he bought, he said 5 years ago at an auction. And it was one of those, I got to pull up the picture. It was a Wathen brand. So AMS, but it had one of those names on it that I didn't recognize. Good fill level on it. Those special old reserves that come in those green boxes, and it hadn't turned, and it had that oakiness and that creaminess that you just don't find anymore. So that one worked out, but they're all hit and miss. It's risky when you do it.
Fred, what was that bottle that got cracked at the Speed Art Museum a couple years ago? Was that an old Overholt from like 1903?
Yeah, so that was an Overholt that was a part of an estate that was connected to the owner of old Overholt, and they gifted this gentleman, instead of taking equity when they were buying out, instead of taking his equity out in money, he took it out in like bottles. And so they got, he had an enormous amount of bottles. So that's why you see a lot of these old Overholt, or I'll just say Overholt, and it'll be 1900 whatever. And those were, made specifically for the Mellon family. So, yeah, those pre-Prohibition bottles, they are always really good, but they were also faked very regularly in that time, especially for Prohibition. And I caution people all the time about drinking them, because bootleggers would actually pee in bottles, just in case, they would get one that was pulled off the rack by a cop or something. And then there were those who would use like sulfuric acid to add on there. I mean, the people died all the time of drinking bad bootlegged gin or whiskey. And so it's a cautionary tale. I mean, it is hit or miss, and you gotta if you can trace it back to the original owner the best you can. That's always preferred. The best way to do that, if anyone's like listening, look for some kind of like governmental something from the government that you can connect it to. But those pre-prohibition whiskeys, my favorites, my absolute favorites from that time are the Pennsylvania Ryes. Those Pennsylvania Ryes taste nothing like the Ryes today. The big herbal Ryes coming out of Indiana, they would fall flat on their face up against these beautiful Pennsylvania Ryes from prior to Prohibition.
So now you know if it has just a little hint of asparagus, probably stay away from it.
Yeah, I've had some blended whiskeys, some Seagrams and pre-prohibition, and now that Fred said people pissed in them, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
it's like, stay away.
that's what I tasted now because it tasted like piss. All right, next topic.
Let's go ahead. Let's dive in with it now. So now that the tariffs have been removed from the European Union, I want to kind of put it out to you. What are some theories? What moves do you expect some distilleries to start making next year in 2022?
It's already started. I mean,
Go on.
hell, Heaven Hill, Bardstown Bourbon, Willits, they've all bought more farms to build more warehouses. They're already going to do 50% more or some 100% more, capacity. They were doing this anyways because they still can't just meet the demand domestically, but now that the tariffs have opened, it just makes them feel better about it. So they're moving onward and upward.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, Buffalo Trace, look at them putting in the new still, throwing in, God, how many warehouses up on the farmland? They are just ramping up. And, we're going to see a lot of other distilleries start doing the same thing, either ramping up or deciding just to take a large allocation of their domestic product and start capturing some of that global market again.
Yeah, I think it's actually huge for all level of producers. One, because, I think it was Brown-Forman, they came out and just talked about the amount of money that they'd lose on Jack Daniel's sales because of the tariffs. And it's huge numbers, but also, I mean, you're opening up a market to millions of people for some of these small brands who, maybe they have a harder time catching on in their own backyard. Sometimes they can go over to the the European market, and the fact that they're an American whiskey, they're craft, they're small producer, and it tastes good. I think that's huge for them. So really, I think it's a win all around. But I still think we'll see more of a push of the the $20 to $30 bottle. That was who was affected most by it. Some of those higher price bottles, they can eat a little bit of that. It eats into their margin for sure. But all in all, I think it's a great win, and I'm excited to see some of the craft brands I love popping up over in European Instagram and all that, because the people over there can now get it.
Blake, I'll pose this question to you a little bit, because honestly, it almost seems like a weird business decision to say, all right, we can't sell our whiskey here in America, so let's go ahead, let's take it overseas and we'll try to sell it there. I don't know. For me, I find that to be a tough pill to swallow, to say, like, if we can't find the right market here, who's to say that Finland is the right place?
Yeah, I mean, not that everything needs to go back to an Office quote, but what was the one where Ryan's talking about Pam? He's like, yeah, she's a Scranton 8, but like a New York 6 or something. It's kind of the same deal, to be honest. When you have less choices out there, you're going to stand out more. So if you do a better job of connecting, and let's be honest, it's a crowded space. We all live different places. Well, some of us, and we can walk into the, liquor store, supermarket, wherever it is, and there's a shelf stacked with different bourbon options, and it's harder to stick out. Whereas when they go into the European market, it's more like those shelves were in, say 2008 to 2010 or so, where there's far less choices, far less things for other people to grab instead of it. If they want American whiskey, it's just a better opportunity to stand out on the shelf.
So here's the funny thing about this. Like, overseas, there's not a defined understanding or palate for American whiskey. I mean, in comparison to the United States, there's almost no understanding. So you could be an absolute shelf turd here in the United States, go over there with your over oakness, with your moldy grain and your like inferior smoking technique, and stand out, and someone in France or Germany, may find some beautiful qualities in them. So that's, I mean, I think there is some like really good business strategies to approach overseas. But in terms of like what is going to what I think is interesting, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. What the whiskey tariffs did, they did something uh, as similar as what we saw, with the prior to the Bottled and Bond Act, where the distillers worked together to get that act in place. They did something similar as they did to get prohibition repealed, and as they did to bond together over World War II with making industrial alcohol. The whiskey tariffs basically forced all of the lobbies to work together. And they came out of this whole ordeal as one of the, not the most powerful, but one of the most strategic and uniquely able to reach any politician lobbying groups that there is out there. Like if somebody wants to take, if someone from the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States or the Kentucky Distillers Association is calling, there's a congressman or senator who's more eager to take that meeting than, say, a utilities lobbyist. So what came out of this is you see a lot of strength in the distilled spirits industry from the lobbying perspective, and that they're not putting that muscle into the federal government. They're doing it at the state governments. What you will see in 2022, you will see a very aggressive effort in Kentucky to do things like repeal the ad valorem tax. You will see states try to open up direct-to-consumer shipping. You will see states that have really strict blue laws come in, not with just the muscle of their state distillation associations, but from the federal backing at that level from Discus. I think what you might see here is that the whiskey tariffs actually transformed the way that the industry communicates to government officials. And they got their shit together, and they're coming for every law that's hindering them in the business. And that includes the 3-tier system. So I think 2022 is the beginning of an enormous shakeup at the state level across the country.
I sure hope you're right. I want to be on board with that, but I think this is just a part of, Biden undoing everything that Trump's done, and bourbon just happens to be a part of it. But I hope you're right in that sense that this is going to move the ball forward in other senses. But I think it's just kind of bourbon was attached to, those Trump tariffs and whatnot, and Biden's undoing everything Trump's doing, and this is a nice byproduct of it.
I agree with both of those. I think it's happening. It was already starting. The ball was already in motion, and I think this is going to help it. When I was thinking of what's going to happen in 2022, I thought of two acronyms: DTC and RTD. So I'm with you, Fred, on the direct to consumer shipping. That's going to be a good thing for the industry, and it's going to help tear down another brick of the 3-tier system. And then the ready to drinks. I think that's going to be it's already starting. I think it's going to be the next big boom. I think it's going to start replacing the flavored whiskeys. We've already seen Fireball falling down. It's not what it once was. And Wild Turkey's had so much success on ready to drinks. I think the other distilleries are going to start following in those footsteps. And
let's face it, ready to drink products are really good. There's a product coming out of New York called Symphony that I drink on when I want to kind of relax and it's cold. But I think that when you look at like the 3-tier system, the wholesalers are not going away, and they've got a very powerful argument every single time. So as long as there is a largely 3-tier compliant, as it is within the system, they will argue it's drizzly. As long as that, that can be weaved in, I think that's going to be a comfortable thing for the industry. But until the distillers and wholesalers can agree on what is shipping to a consumer, I don't know if we're ever going to get anywhere. I mean, it's probably going to be something as ridiculous as a distiller buys the product directly from a wholesaler to make sure that it's going to be sold to someone who's 21. I don't know, but there's a lot of friction there. and that part's not going to go away. And the wholesalers are very powerful. They're very vocal. And, the fact is they do enter in the presidential elections. When Bernie Sanders emails got hacked, they came up in the discussions. So they're not a force to deny, and they've got a lot of great points. And I just think, candidly, the shipment to consumers is never going to be what we wanted, but it's slowly happening. And I think next year you're going to see the force of the distillers and the wholesalers. They're going to find a way to meet in the middle in some places, and other places they're just going to be in an all-out war.
Fred, I'll have one more question for you there. And I also want to kind of add something to this too, is that do you think that with the tariffs going away, that European Union could actually make it more advantageous and more of an advantage for American distillers to actually ship their product over there than it is to sit there and deal with everything that's in the 3-tier system over here today? And we could potentially just see some brands just go straight overseas, not even mess with going into America.
So we're talking about the European Union and not the United Kingdom at this point.
Correct, because the Brexit and all that sort of stuff.
So I think there could be a little an interesting play there from the European Union. I do. But I think the demand for American whiskey outside of maybe Germany for, in Europe is United Kingdom. And I think that's where the growth is and where people are excited about it. I think it's a little harder sell in a lot of places, but never underestimate the power of the American soldier to be a fine brand ambassador wherever there are bases. And there are a lot of bases in Germany. And believe me, they're also in Italy, and wherever the bases are, the whiskey goes, and you can see it kind of spreading out through that way. So I think, I think there could be some cool strategies there to play, but I don't think anyone's getting, lining up to create new special deals, or what you like to talk about, the penny packer bottling over there to ship back here. So I don't know. I don't think so.
Jordan, did you have something to kind of put in there as well?
No, going back to what Fred was saying about this was taking a step back with the distilleries. I think what's really going to be interesting is if the post office falls and they're pushing hard, if they open up the floodgates to allow shipping, you're going to see everyone band together and figure out a way to make this work. And we're going to see a lot more of that 3-tier system actually working together to get that product out to consumers everywhere. And that's going to be a huge domino that's probably going to fall in 2022.
I agree. I mean, Southern Glaciers could set up a hub within the USPS. I don't care how it happens. I just think there's a way it can happen. I mean, hell, they could put a driver with they can have only an alcohol driver in every state to do the deliveries. There are ways to make it work, but everyone's always just trying to protect, their turf. Never underestimate that. They're trying to keep jobs on the table. They're trying to do what they think is right. And we're getting closer to a solution, but we're not
Blake's all like, hold on. The whole DC thing's working out pretty well now. Let's not go too far.
I mean, Blake's got a great model though. He's doing everything right. Sealbox is doing everything right. So I don't think anyone's attacking that model.
Thank you, Fred. We'll take that quote and put it on your face, and we're going to send it out to everyone. No, but I mean, you're right, Fred. I think at this point, everybody just wants to see it happen, and I don't care exactly how it has to look. We'll work within those guidelines, but let's open this thing up at this point. I think we've kind of veered off the tariff talk, but I'm with you. My FedEx guy started asking for my license, and he'll scan it every time I get a package now. So I think there's just stuff like that is pretty low hanging fruit to ensure that underage people aren't getting boxes. And yeah, let's go from there.
For sure.
I'll
go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was going to bring it back to the tariff and the concern about LEs, limited editions, and whatnot. I wasn't concerned, but then I read an article that was in Mark Brown's newsletter this morning, talking about the UK and how, quality American whiskey is still such a better value than Scotch. And, talking about the Pappy Van Winkles, the Michters, and all that, and how much value it is, even the most premium ones. And so I could see, maybe these American companies saying, hey, let's go over there, and, with our limited release stuff and expose the American whiskey, in those premium markets. That would be one concern as a whiskey enthusiast here. While we're already pinched already on these aged stocks, hell, maybe that's why Stag didn't enter. They knew the tariff was coming. They're all going to Europe next year.
Calling it early.
You bring up a really good point, and then I don't know how many distillers, because of the tariffs, are going to shift their domestic strategies simply because of like nobody enjoyed the tariffs. Nobody enjoyed it. And I don't want to say they're sour, but what happened domestically? And look, I'm on the hook as much as anybody for talking about how tariffs have potential to bring bourbon down. I mean, I wrote that in my book, Bourbon, and I wrote that in the New York Times. So I'm definitely on the hook for saying that didn't happen. Some brands were hurt, and a lot of smaller brands lost a very vital part of their strategy. But domestic growth, especially at the retail level, really came in and went after new brands and high level brands. Were they going after Jim Beam white label? No. Maybe Evan Williams black label, but for the most part, I just think that the tariffs going away is a big play and a big win for Jack Daniel's and maybe a handful of other brands. For everybody else, business as usual.
I'll throw one more scenario out there and then we'll kind of move on. And that's looking at to say, well, now that we have another piece of the world that gets opened up, and you have companies like Diageo and Pernod Ricard and Remy Cointreau that know how to work international sales, like that is a good opportunity for them to buy somebody that is not necessarily struggling domestically, but has some excess capacity that they can then start really pushing out to a global market. And that could be a potential acquisition target for somebody here in the relative near future too.
Good luck finding somebody with excess capacity right now. I don't know of anyone.
I'm just saying there's somebody that has extra bottles sitting around.
Yeah. There's got to be acquisition.
Breaking news! I just got some inside information that Pursuit United is changing all of their efforts to.
We're just check convert to 700 ml. No, I'm kidding.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's keep moving here. Let's talk about some bourbon release stuff. Spirits of French Lick pays tribute to the many distilleries that once dotted the southern hills of Indiana. They focus on using the best practices of those early times in balance with the improved methods of today, delivering the finest handcrafted bottled and bond bourbons to an audience that's eager for an alternative to the big guys. Their distilling philosophy is balance between the distiller's art and the contribution of the barrel, time, and patience to bring you an unparalleled quality and depth of flavor. Spirits of French Lick's motto is simple: respect the grain. You can find all Spirits of French Lick's products and their new releases on sealbox.com. But don't just take Fred Minnick's word for it. Find out for yourself. And check out spiritsofFrenchlick.com and follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember to always drink responsibly. Spread holiday cheer at Total Wine & More, a wonderland for every wine, spirits, and beer lover on your list, including you. Wrap up gift giving with top-notch bourbons for top-shelf collectors, and pair it with a roasted duck for a jolly match. Uncork joy with a merry Cabernet and meet under the mistletoe. And don't miss this year's top 20 wines handpicked by elves. Ring in the new year with their top bubbly picks, and with over 8,000 wines, 4,000 spirits, and 2,500 beers, you'll find just the right bottle that'll look great in a bow, and at prices that feel like a present. Choose curbside pickup, in-store pickup, shipping, or delivery, and fill your sleigh in-store or at TotalWine.com. Spirits not available in Virginia or North Carolina. The Heaven Hill Bourbon Experience underwent an expansion, renovation, and renaming as a culmination of a multi-year $19 million investment in Kentucky's signature industry and a model for the future of tourism. The state-of-the-art Visitor Center is an interactive, educational space offering signature exhibits unique to the Visitor Center, including a You Do Bourbon experience, where guests are guided through a tasting of unique products. And to commemorate your visit, you'll have the opportunity to bottle your favorite bourbon or whiskey through the custom-designed filling machines, and then you can apply the label and personalize it in the bottling room. To learn more about bourbon, Heaven Hill's history, and their award-winning portfolio, go to heavenhilldistillery.com/booking to schedule a tour. Heaven Hill reminds you to think wisely, drink wisely. Cheers. Let's talk about some bourbon release stuff. So we had a pretty good year of bourbon releases, I feel like, other than not seeing our good friend George T. Stagg this year. Overall, I thought there was a lot of good bourbon releases. However, I kind of want to put a question out to you all, is that not to say the best bourbon release, a lot of the limited editions, they all get the spotlight. And let's kind of talk about these a little bit. Was there a bottle release that you felt that came out that was really good and has just flown under the radar, and now we're going to give it the attention that it deserves?
Yeah, let me jump on this one because it's the redheaded stepchild, literally. The makers, FAE 1 and 2, haven't gotten the love that they deserve. They're doing some really remarkable, I think, ingenious things with these different staves and these different techniques that they're doing. Still don't know why they'd call it fatty acid esters, but I mean,
for how good they are at marketing, you think they whiffed on that one.
They whiffed on FAE, but and the esters aren't even because of that process.
Hold on now. I am here to defend fatty acid esters as a rum lover.
Bring it.
That is spirit's language, baby. That's basically telling me how it's going to hit my palate, how it feels. Come on now. I'll be hating on fatty acid esters.
It didn't change because they cooked with infrared light on a stave. I mean, it's good stuff they're doing, but regardless, they whiffed on the name. But man, those fell under the radar. Those are things people really ought to be paying attention to instead of some of the chasing that they're doing.
Those are really good. I agree, Brian.
They are good. Do you think it might have been, again, back to a marketing thing? As a normal everyday consumer, you see Maker's Mark and you see the red wax, you're like, okay. And then you see FAE 01. Are you thinking, is this some kind of science experiment? Am I supposed to like this? I mean, it literally says wood finishing series. Like, you don't really know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, they of all of the people who know how to market, it's Makers. But they didn't really, I mean, they call it a limited edition, but they didn't really market it like a limited edition. You got the spring and you in the fall, like Four Roses used to do with a single barrel and small batch, but it just really didn't get the hype. And I don't have the answer for why. Maybe it was because they thought it was an experiment. But
did anybody here watch True Blood?
Did not.
No, I never watched True Blood.
Sorry.
We once again, we don't have as much time as you, Fred.
So there was a species called Fey, and that's what I thought it was when I first saw that. I thought this was an ode to the True Blood series. See? But then, of course, you get it and you taste it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. So that's mine.
All right. I'll go with one next. I thought one that kind of really helped push the mold a little bit, made something a little bit new and unique this year, was Chattanooga's Bottled in Bond. I thought they came out with a really good release. They also tried to do something that's different in regards of breaking the mold of like, what is a Bottled in Bond? I mean, we all know, at least 4 years old, at least 100 proof, but one distilling season. However, they did all that, but with different mash bills, and they blended it all together, and they really took a different approach to really what the Bottled in Bond category was. I thought overall, in general, it didn't taste like their 91 or their 111, which is usually a super malty, super chocolatey. This was a little more fruit forward, a little more like honey and stuff like that. Some of those lighter flavor notes that I really enjoyed. I thought that was one that kind of ran under the radar for most people. I think Blake probably knows best if he's actually sitting on Summit Seal Box, probably not anymore. But I felt like that was one that just probably didn't have a ton of hype behind it. But the good thing is that they're going to have a lot of continual Bottled in Bond releases from here on out. And they're all going to take that same formula, but the variation on the formula. So kind of taking all these different mash bills, but creating some sort of new blend in multiple times per year.
Yeah, I don't know about Kenny jumping in and stealing my answer there, but
Did I? Yes. Finally, I did it
it
to
was
somebody
definitely
else.
in there. I feel like I had to give a nod to the craft crowd, but I'll second that. Chattanooga had an incredible bottled and bond release. Um, Man, it's hard to say underrated at this time, but actually another one that pops to mind that we are kind of talking pre-show is the O.H. Ingram, their flagship bourbon. I think we kind of all looked at it at first, was like, okay, what are they really doing? It's aged on barges on the Ohio River, and then you taste it and it's really good. The story makes sense. And it definitely gets some attention, but definitely one that is still out there floating around, and I think is worth the purchase. So I'll throw that out there. There's been some other ones, but it's kind of hard to say. What's our level of Instagram posts that it gets before we call it underrated.
What's the what was the specs on that one? What did they do that made it so great? Just kind of fill everybody in here.
Yeah. Oh man, put me on the spot. So it's before the first release they did was actually a blend of bourbon and rye. So they called it a blend of straight whiskeys or something. Then they did a rye release. So this was just their straight bourbon. So it's aged. I think it's almost 2 years on the barge. So it's MGP. They're pretty transparent about all that. And then it spends 2 years floating on the water. They essentially built a rick house on the water, and with the moving, I guess it's not tides, but just the movement of the river up and down, it's aging, and causes that barrel interaction. So
That was going to be my pick, Blake. So you,
well, I'm glad I got to it first.
you did,
Well,
you did
yeah.
as Kenny did to you.
It's
I
like
was gonna
it's like white elephant, but for bourbon
Yeah.
picking right now. Everybody's just
Fred,
Yeah.
now you
stealing
take
something.
You take Jordan's pick now, Fred.
I was going to say Jefferson's cognac finish rye, but that's a rye. I'm really hot on that one, and I know,
No, I think it's solid. That's a good one. I remember trying that one too, and I thought they did a really good job with that.
I love that one. In a cognac barrel, I think is an aggressive barrel to use against a rye. So if I'm going to like skirt out a little bit from the bourbon and go to a rye, I'm going with the Jefferson's cognac finish.
No, I thought it was pretty solid. We did a whiskey quickie on that one. I thought it was really good. I thought it was well balanced for what it was. And I think we've seen a huge influx of cognac finished bourbons and whiskey, just whiskeys in general, I believe this year. And I think we're probably going to see more in years to come. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought Joseph Magnus might have pioneered that one a little bit. They seem like they've been doing that for a few years now, of kind of doing the cognac finish on a lot of theirs.
Nancy Fraley was definitely ahead of the curve on that one. But yeah, I'm trying to think of anybody else who may have had one. Well, didn't Beam have one? Or no, that was Port.
Bellamede
Yeah.
had a real nice cognac finish. I mean, they've been out there. Beam had a cognac finish in the late 90s, and it's just you're what you're seeing here is you're seeing a barrel that is closely created to the specs of a bourbon barrel, but has been aging a brandy, and they're very complementary. However, people just assume like sweet on sweet is going to work, but those cognac barrels have more tannic acid than the American oak that's being used in bourbon barrels, and it can break apart some of the softer notes in bourbon. So I think Trey Zoller did something really right with rye. I think rye I think that could be the perfect whiskey to put in a cognac barrel. And I get really excited about Armagnac barrels. There's a lot of people aging in Armagnac, so I can't wait. The next 5 years for barrel finishes, I think they're also going to clean up the definitions and terminology. That's a whole nother episode, but I think that's going to happen at the federal government here very soon. But the barrels that are coming online for these distillers, watch out. There's going to be a whole lot of new flavor profiles come out.
That's going to be exciting. And one thing, just one point on what Fred said about the softer notes and the rye being more appropriate for that. I remember a Heaven Hill Select stock that was a barrel proof, so that little squatty bottle, and it was cognac finished, and it it fought each other. The sweet flavors just of that softer wheat really fought each other. So I haven't had that rye, but I totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I also don't want to be remiss to also mention that rye release, I think it was their Jefferson's first rye that they've done now in 8 years. Ever since they got rid of that Jefferson's presidential, like the side profile on the bottle, I think it's their first rye release in a long, long time, if I remember the press release correctly. But all right, who's next?
So I'm gonna tack on to Fred's veering off into the rye a little bit. I'm gonna do the same. So I'm actually gonna give a bottle and I'm gonna give a brand because I was thinking about this one. So bottle that flew under the radar, I think that I found excellent this year. I think it missed a lot of good press. Was Leopold Bros 3 Chambers Rye. So I think what they did there was just amazing, right? So they literally found old federal documents, rebuilt a 3-chamber still that hadn't been seen in 100 years, used a different type of rye grain, and this is just a creamy, delicious rye. You can still go and find it out there. The first edition's still out there. It's just fantastic, right? It's something that's not your traditional rye. Tastes really, really good. Flew under the radar for a lot of folks. Then I think a brand that not a lot of people talk about, but is solidly good and shouldn't come as no surprise, but Stellam, right? From the creators of Barrel Craft Spirits, Stellam Bourbon and Stellam Rye. They're just solid, easy to find, easily approachable in terms of price for the wallet. And I don't think they're getting the attention that people should be giving them because they're both 2 really good products.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've seen them now quite a lot out in the market, and they've also started their own single barrel picks of Stellam. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that happen. It's one of those things that you kind of start with a different brand, which I don't know, for them it was very interesting to kind of see how Barrel went off and kind of because they've been known for creating barrel proof blends and kind of putting it out there, and now they're creating it's technically another barrel proof blend, right? But they have a different name. So there's a little bit different story. So it's interesting to kind of see how they sort of put this little fork in the road.
Yeah, maybe it'll be something more consistent, instead of the big variations with the different batches.
Exactly. And I think it's going to be a forever changing product, but yeah.
It was all about price point. I mean, they had to create something that was under that $80, $90 price point. And everybody who's getting in the game is trying to create that $50 price point or below. And this is off topic here, but I don't know how people do it. Like when you're buying barrels from other sources and buying the glass and everything. I mean, everything's like 20% more than if you own your distillery. And so what you two have done, Kenny and Ryan, is, to me, like keeping that price down is really, it's really to be commended, because I know those margins are probably laser thin.
No, big news. Prices are going up next year for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. We're not doing that. We're trying to eat as much cost as we can and take care of freight costs when glass prices go up and all that sort of stuff. It's part of just doing business.
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say Pursuit United was my
I would say
favorite.
so.
I'm kidding.
Has to be.
But Kenny, Blake, everyone stole my chat. So I went with this 2 ways. I went, all right, who's on the craft side and who's on the big brand side? The craft side, I was Chattanooga, but another brand was Still Austin for 2. I was scrolling through our whiskey quickies earlier when you asked this, and I was like, man, I forgot how good that was. And it's like 2-year-old whiskey. And I didn't like the cask strength version as much, but the one that was like 90 proof was really good, really balanced, had some great flavors in there for a 2-year whiskey. And then, man, I was really impressed with the Booker's tag-along batch this year. It was usually Booker's, I'm like, they're good, but I like them in a cocktail or a little ice, or they're just too hot. This one was so well balanced, had so many different flavors on the bourbon flavor wheel. Hit all the checkpoints. It was really perfect for me, and I haven't had that out of a Booker's batch in a long time, and so I thought it was really good. Under the radar, probably not under the radar because it's Booker's, but under the radar for me because I typically don't gravitate towards Booker's.
Me and you have the same exact theory and strategy coming up with these things, because I was scrolling through our whiskey quickies trying to figure out, like, what did we taste this past year? I'm so glad we document this stuff like that, because I'm not going to be able to remember everything.
Well, I was like, King of Kentucky, that was excellent. But you can't say those because it's not under the radar.
Exactly. I thought Booker's tag along was actually pretty good. I had that as well. I was going to say it in case somebody stole my Chattanooga. So it all worked
That's
out.
why you went first.
So you had a
Like, I'm
backup.
going to jump
Nice.
into this quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to make sure I get my 2 cents in. I'm always the one asking questions. But let's go ahead. We'll kind of wrap it up with our sort of last question. This is more of like a cultural thing. As I mentioned, I see scrolling through some of the Facebook forums, and every once in a while there will be a question and it gets a lot of laugh emojis or thumbs up or 400 comments. And this one actually had quite a few. And this said, what would you do if your favorite retailer had to start selling their allocations at secondary prices? Would you keep shopping with them, or would you find another store to purchase from?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think it comes back to, at the end of the day, it's a reminder, right? If they're going, it's business. So if they're going to treat you well, they're going to make sure a bottle's set aside for you. If you've been loyal to them, they'll be loyal to you. If they're no longer going to be loyal to you due to whatever reason they need to do to raise the prices, then you shouldn't feel an obligation to feel loyal to them anymore either, right? You can still support them how you want, but feel free to branch out to other local stores in your area. Or, maybe you just go find a brand new store in the metaverse and just start shopping around there.
The metaverse. Oh, you're bringing that up. Anybody that doesn't know, you start Googling it now. It's a whole new world we got to get involved in. But yeah, no, I think you bring a good point there, Jordan. There's definitely something to be said about, making sure you stay loyal to them. But there's also something to be said that's like, I have spent my last 5 years building up a relationship here, and I'm not ready to flush it down the toilet yet. So even if I spend maybe, I'll try to talk them down sometimes, maybe 20 to 30% over retail. So I don't know if I'd jump off right away until I try to do some negotiation tactics.
Yeah, I mean, I can see both sides to this, so I don't want to come out too far in one way or the other. But as the retailer, if the gas station jacks the prices up to $5 a gallon, you're still going to buy gas because you just kind of assume that's the case, and you're not going to get it anywhere else, and it's going to be that price. But bourbon being a premium product, we're kind of expect these retailers to price it at the MSRP, and a lot of times that's just not realistic. And so, you kind of have, I don't know, it's a dilemma on your hands, because especially if you're the retailer, it's like, well, you don't know if they had to buy a bunch of other products, if they had to, have all these guarantees. So they've got this cost sunk into this product, and then they need to recoup that price or that money invested to get those bottles. So it's a two-edged sword. I mean, I'd say hopefully people aren't leaving because of that. But then I look at secondary prices, and I think, who is paying, $1,000 for an Old Rip 10-year these days? But people pay it. So hopefully retailers aren't doing that anytime soon. But I think you kind of got to understand what the retailer is going through as well. There's lots of pressure from distributors and brands and everybody else to take a lot of products and hit certain sales goals just to get some of these limited products and bottles. So maybe we show them a little grace here and there on some of the pricing, but that's not the popular answer. So I know that.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong either, Blake, with folks if they see other stores in their area selling a $6 bottle for $600. If they want to do that, that's completely fine, and I don't think anyone would hold that against them. But at the same token, then they shouldn't hold any of their customers, right? They shouldn't hold it against any of their customers. Then say, well, okay, then I'm going to shop around too. It's a two-edged sword. That's that way too.
Here's the deal. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Brian, but Blake said something very, very unique in that, like, only a retailer can say, and it's like, have some compassion for the retailer. And
it's not a popular opinion.
It's not a popular opinion because, you can't state an opinion about this on social media without one side or the other saying, well, I'm just an independent retailer trying to make it and you don't get it. Or the consumer saying, like, you're price gouging or whatever. But here's the solution. There are retailers all across this country who get that allocation and they just call up 5 or 6 customers. That person comes in and they buy the Pappy, they buy the Blantons, they buy the Weller. They don't have to deal with the hassles. And like, that person who is making the business decision to put it behind a glass case for whatever number, they could have done that with a phone call to someone who would pay that without having to go through the embarrassing process that is playing out every single day on social media. Someone walks in, hey, Pappy here for $5,000. And everyone tags that person. It's just, I mean, these people are in business. And if you want to be in business any longer, you're going to have to make smart business decisions. Now, you can sell all the Fireball at the front you want for $0.25 or all the vodka you want, but at the end of the day, the trends of alcohol are going toward premium. And if you cannot figure out how to handle the sale of premium bourbon or cognac or armagnac or whatever, well, I'm sorry, but the way that this world is, you're not going to be in business. You got to come up with a better solution than putting it behind a glass case and selling it for $2,000, unless that's the SRP. And it has nothing to do with feelings or protecting consumers. It has to do with smart business decisions. And I recently wrote about or did a video about this. There is no legal recourse that a consumer or a distiller has to keep that person from jacking up the prices. You can thank the Supreme Court for that due to price fixing schemes from distillers in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But there is nothing that we can do. So the law of economics is going to play out, and these people are going to go out of business if they cannot figure out how to properly handle this. Because all you got to do, pick up the phone, call one or two customers, and they're gone. You don't have to deal with the problem. And you're going to have one or two very happy customers. As for what I would do, I mean, I might see that bottle in there and I might feel bad for them. And I might actually buy a bottle of Maker's Mark and just go and then never go back. It's that simple. I mean, I just think this is, it pisses me off, to be frank. I don't know if you could tell.
We can't tell. No.
I
Lay
mean,
it on a little bit thicker if you can.
These, yeah, whatever.
Amen to all of that.
Face is turning like his hat.
That's right. Amen to all that. My thought was also that I'll just go get an Old Foe 1920 and never go back. I mean, that's, why bother at that point? The other thing I was going to bring up that I thought was hilarious, it was just this past week, worse than this question. I saw a post from a store that I will not publicly humiliate. They paired Blanton's with Wheatley vodka, and it was their package post. And you had to buy the damn Wheatley vodka to get the Blanton's. And I'm thinking, people don't do it.
Just fell right into the trap. Hook, line, and sinker right there.
Well, that was a Fred Minnick special, I think, is what they were selling. If I remember that store correctly.
If I remember, isn't that what VIP tickets got you today?
Yeah,
that's right.
It should be coming in the mail relatively soon.
You know what's funny about that? I don't know if that wasn't strategic as a thumb in the eye to raise awareness about it. I mean, Brian, I don't know if that was necessarily to get them to sell the bottles of Wheatley. I mean, that could have been a situation where they're buying it and be like, oh yeah, we have, in order for us to have this, we have to carry that. I mean, that could have been a very strategic way to put a thumb in the eye of the people who made him do that.
Really? That's a lot of forethought before that. That'd be impressive.
You're right. Are you saying that liquor stores don't have that kind of forethought there, Brian?
No,
Depends who it is.
They're trying to move that inventory. They're like, get this shit out of here.
It's true, because if you can move the volume, that's where you start getting more stuff. I've talked to another retailer as well. He's like, hey, what if we did this? What if we were able to do a few barrel picks with you? And then I would sell all of our Wheatley vodka at wholesale plus a nickel. And everybody could just order as much as they want. That way it looks like I'm running through inventory. Like, I don't care about making money on it, but at the end of the year, it looks really good on my sales numbers. So there might be something there.
Well, that's a pretty, open fact. But I mean, at least here in Florida, I know for 100% certainty, barrel picks with Buffalo Trace are connected to Wheatley sales. And if those go up, your allocations of Pappy and everything else goes up, so does your barrel pick opportunities and everything else. So, I mean, I know that's technically not legal. I'm sure they won't, openly say it, but it's like that pretty open secret that everybody knows about. So, they may have been onto something at their retail shop.
So at the end of the day, we can all just agree Jordan had the right answer. Is that what it comes down to?
Okay.
Yes.
I will
Yes.
never agree
Yeah.
to that. And
I would just, doing these crazy, it's short-term thinking, and it's not very, like being in business, you have to think long-term about what kind of customer I want. And do I want them? Okay. Yeah. I might make $1,000 off a guy one time, but I'd rather have somebody I'm going to make $50 off every week. That's, and I have a relationship with it. I don't know. There's just too much short-term thinking in some business models, and I'm not on board with that. I like relationships. I like long-term customers that are going to spend. They might not spend more at you at once, but they are over the lifetime. Every business consultant would say lifetime value of a customer, and that's what I would look at is, what's important.
That's exactly right. And I think I would like to preface everything that I said before, give a caveat of like, I respect those that mark up everything because that's your business model and you're willing to be in the market with that. What bothers me is when you have someone who undercuts like Maker's Mark or Jack Daniels or, against the liquor store across the street, undercuts that, but then jacks up, the premium stuff. That shit bothers me. I have a lot more respect for Justin's House of Bourbon, which has the model of going and, buying things, from individuals and then marking it up because that's how they can realize a profit on it because they're paying more than they would from a distributor.
And they're very transparent too. That's a big difference.
Very transparent.
Yeah, but they'd also tell you their biggest selling brands are, $20 to $30 bottles too.
Yeah.
In
I mean,
stores.
well, that's what I think they have something for everything if you go in the store.
Yeah. I just think that it's not a matter of having high prices. It's the sleaze behind the high prices. And a lot of those places undercut a lot of other products, and they just get people in the door. So I've said my piece. I'm going to drink some of. By the way, Blake, you did a really good job with the toasted. I'm just having this. It's got like a really nice pecan quality to it. I'm really digging it.
Thank you.
Still waiting on mine.
Batch 2 coming soon.
Yeah, it was good. I agree.
Excellent.
It flew so under the radar that we didn't even talk about it.
Man, talk about missed self-promotion there. I should have been promoting Sealbox Private Reserve, but oh well.
We got to keep it under the radar even more. We don't need the world to know about it, Blake. That's why. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. This is a fantastic conversation. We hit a lot of good things. We talked about some bottles. We talked about some cultural topics. And for anybody that's watching this during Repeal Day, if you want to find out and be a part of more of these, make sure you come and check out Bourbon Pursuit wherever you get your podcast. Follow us there. Make sure that you're subscribed there. We do these roundtables once a month, and we bring just a good bunch of topics that we take and we kind of give some expert and maybe not so expert opinions on, but mostly pseudo expert. But before we sort of wrap up here, I want to give the guys down here one more chance and opportunity to give a shout out of where you can find out more about them. And Brian, I'll let you go first.
All right. Happy Repeal Day, everybody. Brian with Sippin' Corn. Find me at Sippin' Corn and Bourbon Justice on all the socials. This has been a good one, guys. Thanks.
For sure. Jordan.
Thanks for watching and listening all. This is Jordan, one of the 3 guys from Breaking Bourbon, breakingbourbon.com. Check us out whenever you're in a liquor store deciding what to buy.
Blake from Sealbox and Bourboner. Guys, always fun. Wish we could do it more often, but once every 3 weeks is probably enough. So thanks for having me. It's been fun. Happy Repeal Day.
Very true. Happy Repeal Day, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, make sure you subscribe to Bourbon Pursuit wherever you get your podcasts. Also follow us on all your social media channels as well. With that, cheers, everybody, and we'll see you all next week.
Vodka sucks.
Cheers.
Toodles.